All right. So today, Dom and I are going to talk about kind of one of the first assessment points, or maybe, and the reasons why we would include this in our assessment in the early stages of creating a training plan is what sort of personality type is this dog? Is it a dog that's kind of introverted, reclusive, nervous, fearful, or is it a dog that is quite resilient and just really bloody headstrong? Because you might be dealing with the same problem with a different dog, ultimately, or the same symptom, but the solution to solving it is going to change quite a lot according to, the personality of the dog. Where do you want to start, Dom?
Well, I think probably just really outlining that in itself. I think that there is a generalized idea that it's one size fits all, that, where people call us and they say, my dog does A, B, C, D. And I think there is a belief that we just go, oh, all you need to do is this.
Yeah.
So when I've spoken to certain people, I spoke to someone last week, and they were telling me about different things that the dog was doing, and they were like, so what would you do to fix that? I'm like, well, it's not a car. If a wheel comes off a car, you just replace the wheel, but you will still want to know why the wheel came off.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just, oh, the wheel came off. Okay, great, we put the wheel back on, but we need to fix why the wheel came off in the first place. So when I said to her, well, I actually need to understand your dog. It's not that, she just did this. It's, well, why did she did this? And why did she do this? Why did she do this?
Why did she did this?
Why did she do this? I'm still in holiday mode. I hope my brain hasn't come back. So it's getting people to understand it's not that simple for them, the dog, or for us to just hear what the behavior that they're dealing with is and then just come up with an instant solution. We have to understand the learning style of the dog. We have to understand the learning style of the human. But we also have to understand, as you said, what is the personality type? Are they a more positive bias dog? Are they a negative bias dog? When they go into situations, how do they approach that situation? What do they do when the environment changes? What do they do in that environment? So what is it? How is their response to that stimulus in itself?
Yeah.
So the amount of variables that we have to look at as behavior consultants is quite varied, dependent on the individual dog, as well as the situation and how that could possibly change.
So when it comes to personality type, things like, I guess, what are some indicators? What are the things that we can look for that might tell us, like, okay, this dog is a little less resilient and, probably isn't going to cope well with a lot of exposure?
Well, I think the first thing is looking at their recovery rate when an environment change. Do they have latency in their response when something changes? So when we look at, say, what we might label as the bomb-proof dog, something appears in the environment, the resilient, confident dog will generally investigate straight away. There will be no pause, there will be no step back, there will be no regression away from the particular thing. They won't be seeking much information from the human a lot of the time, but that's also breed dependent. They will instantly go up, investigate, process what that means for them, and then move on.
That's a big one as well, like the ability to process, right? So, just and this is where it can get muddy, I think, because you will see some dogs, and a lot of people go, well, my dog always moves towards first. It doesn't look like he's scared. And he might not be, he might be the confident dog. But if he's moved forward, but then I always think of it like, if he has to keep asking the question, then he's probably not in a good place mentally and emotionally, right? Like that constant persisting of, I need feedback from this. And that looks different to, I'm here and this is the situation, to I'm here and what is the situation. It's a question asking frame of mind. And that's coming from that place of insecurity in the first place. But that higher the arousal level, the lower the ability to process information. So even though they're asking the question, they're getting feedback, that answer isn't registering, so they ask again, which can exasperate anxiety in itself.
Yeah, and but it's also in that it's looking at what that moving forward actually looks like.
Yeah.
So when we say as consultants, like, what is the observable behavior? Please explain it. So if someone says to me, my dog does this, what does that look like? Tell me exactly the physical response of your dog. So someone I saw on the weekend, they have a new rescue dog that came from a puppy mill, and she's very scared of the world. So when I entered the space, her initial response was to bark and retreat. Now, going to the original thing that we started talking about in assessing, what am I going to do? This was the first time I'd seen the dog. And when I'd spoken to the owner in the very beginning, she's like, where will you go? I said, I need to meet her. I need to see where she is. Like, what is her current baseline? How much, what can we do to improve that baseline? Does she have a recovery rate? Does she not? What happens in the different spaces? So when I entered, she barked, retreated into the bedroom. So I placed myself in a neutral position. I sat down on the chair. I put my bag in a position away from me so she could then access information about me away from me rather than either just staying away from me completely, which, some dogs will do, but I could see that there was still a little bit of curiosity and questions of who are you and what do you mean? So I got the owner to place my bag near the couch, which is a safe space for the dog. The dog came out, she sniffed my bag, went back into the bedroom, poked her head back out, sniffed my bag, then went around the back of the couch and came and sat on the couch. So for me, that was the curiosity and her baseline of where she is in terms of how safe she feels in the house allowed her to recover pretty quickly. There was an initial response of, oh shit, who are you? But actually, who are you?
Mm-hmm.
That's who you might be.
And that initial response, and that's where that resilience and ability to bounce back might come in, because there is an oh shit moment, but then there's also a degree of resilience there to be able to go, wait, it's not that bad. What is going on? And it doesn't mean there's an instant full recovery, but at least there was some curiosity after the initial panic, which you don't always see. Sometimes that panic sets in and that's all they can focus on. They just want out.
Well, and to add to that, so we took her outside and there was no resilience. There was no recovery. So outside she froze, she was panicking. It was a very busy environment, which obviously is what she can't cope with, but there was nothing. And that had been there for a couple of months. So in terms of, again, going back to what you originally were talking about, inside the home where she feels safe, where she's built a feeling of safety, her ability to recover and start to process and understand her space was there.
Yeah.
It was not that slow in comparison. By the end of the consultation that went for 2 hours, she was coming up and sniffing me. I was not touching her, but she was able to come off the couch, her safe space, away from her humans, all directed by her. So her brain was able to process the environment enough to be comfortable and curious to get that information, take that in and go, yep, I'm good. But outside, nothing. There was no response, no behavioral response from her at all, except for panic. So there was no new information taking in. She had for me, it's her mind at the time was get me the fuck out of here. And that was it. It wouldn't have mattered what anyone said or anybody did. If, a dog ran at her, it might have escalated the situation, but her ability to learn and process was just not there and had not been for 8 weeks.
Think of it's like in a narrative, like in the house, she goes, oh shit, that's happening. I'm going to go over to a known safe place so that I can process what's happened. And that doesn't mean she will be able to, but at least she has the safe place to be able to try. Whereas if you don't have anywhere grounding around you, or a human or another being, dog, whatever, that you associate with that kind of centered, calm, steady the ship, safety, then it isn't I'm going to go over here to process. It's I can't be here.
Yeah.
And that's a very different inner narrative. So when we're looking at a more assured dog, what might you see there? Like what sort of characteristics, body language, behaviors might we see if the dog is that just, might see barking and lunging. We might see forward movement, but what might be the difference between a forward movement with a fearful dog or an anxious dog and a forward movement with a confident dog?
Well, a more confident dog, there would be fluidity and lesser hesitation. So the latency in their response just really wouldn't be there. You might get a slight pause, but the pause would be very fluid. The body would be soft and neutral. Things that I kind of look for is just the consistency in the breathing. So if they're breathing, which means their heart rate is at your homeostasis level. So they're not increasing too much. So if they are increasing, obviously there can be arousal, which we still have to see no different really as a dog that might be fearful. It's a change in emotional state, which affects how the brain responds to its environment. So when we see that, we go, okay, well, where are you on the different levels of mental, I suppose I call it mental acceptance of information and feedback. So if we see a dog that just struts up and just, tongue's hanging out the side, there's no change in mouth opening or closing, they're not suddenly closing their mouth, their ear response isn't, because where the ear goes is where the brain is. So if we see a lot of this, it's like, okay, well, your brains are really not there. If you just see this, it's like, oh, shit. So if the dog kind of just struts up and they look at their environment, but also engage with their human as well. So we can see where the baseline of response between the human and the dog is in that context. So if we're trying to change a current behavior, say for a dog that might be jumping up, it's like, okay, the baseline of this dog in this environment is they are able to engage or disengage from their environment to take cues from their human. What we just really need to build is the proofed foundation of the cues or the dialogue between the human and the dog, or changing what the environment is cueing the dog. But with a dog like that, what you're first really building is that focus for me, trying to have that discussion.
Yeah. And again, just to differentiate, to point out the difference between the two, like you got a dog, let's say they're jumping up. That's the thing that the caregivers probably called us about. But if you've got a dog doing it, coming from that insecure, fearful, anxious position, your first port of call is to build confidence so that they can come into a frame of mind where they're actually capable of learning that what you'd like them to learning calm and positive associations. But if you've got a dog who is jumping, but is actually very comfortable in its own skin, you've got a dog very capable of learning. They've just learned what you didn't want to. Right. And so you got two different immediately from that, like little, quick assessment piece. You go, cool, where do we start? What's our starting point? Because you could go down the wrong route or waste a lot of time starting in the wrong place. If you start trying to teach a dog that's anxious or fearful things that involve a lot of cognitive thinking, you're not going to get through to them. You're not going to see very good results. They're just going to be flustered. They're going to be overwhelmed. And so are you, because it's not working. Whereas if you've got a learner that is very clear on what they wanted, very clear with their previous learning, and they're like, yeah, cool, I get this because I enjoy it. And I often find at that point, once we've kind of guided somebody down a training plan with like, hey, look after them first, look after their well-being first, naturally people are inclined to be gentler, softer, more patient. Their communication is probably going to be a little bit more can you instead of will you. And so it should be. But with the dog that's super pushy, because they're like, I know what I want, you can probably afford to be a little bit more concise, clear, with your actual direction instead of too much focusing on calming them down.
Well, I think it's with those type of dogs, it is being precise and clear, because sometimes I think the reason that they have those particular behaviors, because the confident dog that we deal with, generally it's those sorts of behaviors. They don't come back when they call, they jump on people, they don't stay in a behavior. I think it's because we haven't been clear and precise. We've been wishy-washy, and they've just gone, well, you're not telling me what to do, so I'm just gonna, do you know what, this has worked for me, and it's going to continue to work for me until you get really annoyed by it, and then eventually you're going to have to try and change my behavior. But I'm going to have a really solid foundation of this working for me.
Yeah.
So there is going to be that competing reinforcement or consequence for the dog that the human has to deal with. So it's observing the dog's response to what we're teaching them. So when I see clients and I'm like, your dog's going to tell you if you're not doing it right, because they're the learner, as well as us as the human. We are also learning, but there has to be that constant, okay, I'm asking you to do this, and if the dog goes nah, then we have to not then just go, oh well, screw you. We go, okay, well, you're saying no because I'm either asking you in a situation that the reinforcements and the consequences are way too strong to compete with. So then I have to dial it back, because, you know, part of their brain is going, well, this has worked for me here. Ha, this has worked for me here. Ha, ha. So then we have to take it out and go, okay, well, I'm not going to, even though they're a confident dog, there's still going to be that competition between stimulus.
Yeah.
If we're trying to get rid of a solid behavior compared to, you know, a dog that might be fearful that we're trying to change the association.
Yeah.
So what we sometimes see, or what I see sometimes, is confusion between frustrated and anxious dogs. Now, in my very early baby stage, guaranteed I got it wrong. And I was doing the same thing for both dogs. But over the years, I've thankfully educated myself better. And I see clients now that have been probably with young trainers like I was, that was confusing frustration for fear. And they were using a counter conditioning technique for them jumping and lunging at the end of the lead.
Yeah.
When that's not actually what they should be doing.
I had one this morning.
Yeah. Okay.
I had a cattle dog that the main things that they were working on were barking and lunging at motorbikes and jumping at guests. Now, this dog, pretty bomb-proof. It's a rock solid, mentally and emotionally stable dog. And we looked at it and went, yeah, look, she just doesn't know when she's meant to herd things, when she's not meant to herd things, and potentially she's not getting the herding needs met in other circumstances. So we put together, in like, without going into too much detail, the training plan involved, away from motorbikes and away from people, build in some games that meet the herding need, but really importantly, build a communication style that it's essentially a green light, red light. Like, okay, go, okay, wait, don't go. And that don't go, the no, the don't do that is super important for this dog, because the natural instinct isn't to show inhibition. The first thing this dog does is, I saw it, I chase it. It doesn't have a split second between it. It's like, nah, it's moving. Of course I'm going to chase it. So we needed to teach movement equals check-in, or at least show inhibition. And no, we're not using aversives. We're just putting in a situation where it's like, cool, that moved. And we introduce that movement gradually so that they're coherent when it happens. And then we gradually build up the speed in which it happens so that they're practiced it. And when it's moving at that, at real life speed, it's well rehearsed, not chasing it. So that when we're in a situation in real life, something moves like a motorbike, and we go, wait there, don't chase that, Millie. And she goes, I understand. Thank you for letting me know, because I was definitely going to chase that. And same with the guests, right? Don't jump up. It's okay. Go and wait behind here. Come on up. And you can do lots of things, Mel. You can wait on your bed, you can go and greet them, but all four paws on the floor. But as soon as we kind of show some weight shifting towards it, I didn't mind the owners going, Millie. And it's a verbal interrupter because they could sit, they're good handlers and they saw the weight shift. She's not subtle about it. She rocks backwards and then she springs. It's not like a little bunny hop on her. So as soon
Yeah.
as the weight, we're looking for the early sign and we go, Millie, and she's like, oh, yeah, yeah, cool. Thanks for letting me know. And she doesn't take any offense to being asked not to. In fact, it settled her down a million times faster, where she was then able to go into that frame of mind that you talked about, where making good decisions, cognitively being able to walk around the room, engage with people in a polite manner, go on, and after, I honestly think 2 or 3 minutes, she left the room and went to sleep.
But I think what you just outlined there is what sometimes has been missed. And again, I can put my hand up, and I've done it before with clients when I started. We don't give dogs enough information, especially dogs that are herding breeds, that we bred to go off the information we give them. And then we bring them in a home and we surround them by all of these moving stimulus that we bred them to notice. All moving stimulus. You see the fly, chase the fly. You see the cockroach, chase the cockroach. You see the motorbike, chase it, chase it, chase it, chase it.
Literally talking about sky raisins today.
Exactly. Well, that's it. Like, where did they get their name from? So it's when we're looking at those types of dogs, in comparison to like a Cavalier or a Pug, or even like a guardian breed. A guardian breed, it's just what you're doing right there, you like bark at that person, great, thank you very much. But with a herding breed, it's like, okay, chase it, go nuts, but just wait for me. Now you can go, because they need that feedback. They need that yes and no, because otherwise you get what
they need more
about,
structure and clarity from their environment.
Yeah.
And like that's a generalization, and it's not always accurate. But what knowing the breed does, or knowing about the breed, more to the point, does, it can give us a preconceived idea of what the dog is likely to be like. It doesn't mean they will be, and we still have to absolutely watch the individual in front of us. But it helps us with our process of elimination. Like, we go into it going, okay, great. At least I know that we have a herding breed. They're likely to take comfort from a lot of clarity. They're likely to be quite confident when herding. Doesn't mean they will be. I'm still going to be looking for all the things we talked about previously, but I'm going to go in with some sort of notion of like, cool, I think I know what I'm looking for. It doesn't mean that's what I'm going to find.
No. And that's, again, going back to, what we're talking about in this podcast, it's understanding what we have in front of us, working with what we have in front of us in terms of the dog and the client as well, so that when we do design our training plan, we're not just walking in with a cookie cutter. Okay, so your dog's reactive, so we're going to teach them to sit, and they're going to wait until the dog walks past, or the person, and then we're either going to feed them, or we're going to beat the crap out of them, whichever technique you might be deciding to use.
Yeah, and you shouldn't. And then just to go back to that part again, like, just to reiterate that point of like, I see a lot of people get a type of dog and then assume that that's what they're going to fill the stereotype, and they'll go, oh, but I didn't think German Shepherds were like that. Well, no, the majority aren't, but yours is. And so we have to work with that individual regardless. Always work with the individual in front of you. And understanding that bias that we have, we will always enter a situation with a bias as soon as we see a breed with prominent breed traits. We're going to have like I say, we're going to have an idea, but always have that open mind of going, yeah, but that's not behaving the way I wanted to. What I always find fascinating is when I'm working with a mixed breed, and they might look more like one type of dog, but they're behaving like something else.
Yeah.
I think a really common one I've seen is like a spoodle that maybe looks more poodly.
Yeah.
They're behaving like a spaniel, and you're like, nah, we're treating this dog like a poodle when we aren't meeting any needs, and we need to treat him like a spaniel, like that. And sometimes, like, just getting a DNA. I've had a dog recently where we just honestly, we were like, what is the motivation of this dog? It's really hard to see. So we did a DNA test, and it didn't look like it, but this dog had something like 3 or 4 guardian breeds in it.
Yeah, right.
And we're like, yeah, right, cool. That makes so much sense. It's guarding, it's protection. Cool. Genuine protection, like in the breed. Like, cool. That makes heaps of sense now.
Yeah.
And no wonder what we were playing around with wasn't quite bringing the results we wanted.
Mm.
But it's still, yeah, it always goes back to, doesn't it? Like we said at the beginning. Just because you've got a problem, like the problem's normally a symptom, and you've got to find out what caused the problem in the first place.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, mate. I think that'll do us for today.
I think so.
Good
See you
work.
next time.
Exactly.
Bye.
All right, everybody. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time.